So you mentioned early on in our show, even in this short time you've been open, you have some stories. So tell us the most satisfying story for you, where maybe a patient, either you really changed their life, or you saved them a lot of money, saved them a lot of time. I'm sure you have many of those, but tell us one of the ones that sticks out in your mind.
Well, there's actually two that stick out in my mind, and actually we've decided to film these and put them on our website. They're just really fun stories. The first was a gentleman who had a real bad experience with COVID, and so a relative here asked me if I would give him a call. He lived in Colorado. He says my relative does, and so I gave him a call, and the scenario was I gave him a call like May or so of last year, in May of this year. And his experience was that in September of last year, he was mandated to take the shot or he would lose his job. And so he held out to the last day. And this is a gentleman who's a terrific athlete all of his life. In fact, I think he was all state in wrestling, and he's about 50 years old, and he still plays hockey about 4 to 5 days times a week. I mean, this man's an athlete. He's and about 3 days after getting the shot, he got COVID and was having such difficulty breathing. They admitted him and started him on remdesivir, intubated him, and then he was in a coma for 2 months. And so he was discharged from the hospital December 24th of last year with a walker and an oxygen tank. And basically physical therapy didn't do much for him. And that's pretty much the condition he was in when he called, or I called him. And I said, well, you need to find somebody. We found out about FLCCC's protocol with Dr. Paul Merrick and Dr. Peter Corey, and we just kind of use that as a basis. Everyone who comes in, I vary how I approach people because everyone has a little nuance, and even Dr. Corey himself says every patient that comes in, I saw a talk he had a couple of days ago where he goes, every patient that comes in is a learning experience for me. So he's still in that investigative mode himself. But I told him he needed to find someone in Colorado that would do FLCCC. And he called me back 2 days later and said, I can't find anyone who will do it. Can I come drive there to your office and see you? And I go, okay, sure. If you want to make the drive, of course. And he was feeling, and when we saw him, we don't have a big office. I mean, you guys have seen it. And to go from the parking lot into our waiting room was a big event for him. And then to go from the waiting room to the patient room was quite a task. And so he was feeling so much better in 4 days. He said, can I come back and recheck in a month here? And I go, well, of course. So he came back in a month. And when he showed up, no walker, no oxygen tank, walks into our waiting room like nothing, walks into the patient room like nothing. And he's sitting there, and I'm rather stunned and thinking, wow, he looks great. That's what I'm thinking inside. And I go, so tell me, how are you doing? He goes, well, I'm better. And I go, okay, well, tell me about it. And he goes, well, when I play hockey, I have to sit down and breathe oxygen after about 3 minutes. Like he's upset at me, right? I go, wait. And I looked at his wife and I said, did I hear that correctly? And she goes, Doc, it made me cry when he got back on the ice because he loves it so much. And so I said, so you're playing hockey? And he goes, yeah, but I have to sit down after 3 minutes and breathe oxygen. I go, wait, hold it. Let's be patient here. Let's take some time. And he goes, okay. And so he's continued to get better. He's not fully back, but he has radically changed from what he was when we first saw him. Another gentleman is a substitute teacher. It's in his high 60s. And he had another bad reaction. In fact, right after he was injected, he immediately felt neurological problems, and such that his wife had to drive home. And they told him, oh, this will go away in a couple of days. It'll be no big deal. And so what he did was that night he tried to go to the bathroom and he couldn't even walk. So he couldn't get off the floor. His wife couldn't help him get off the floor. So they called the paramedics, and the paramedics had to help him. And the next morning, he could not walk. And so he saw a ton of people who thought he had some sudden onset neurological disorder, and he was in a wheelchair, and saw lots of specialists, lots of scans. Nobody could figure out what was wrong with him. And he was injected February 22nd of 2021. And so he had been like that for 15 months when I saw him. And in fact, when we started the treatment, when we weighed him at check-in, I had to hold his belt up so that he could stand on our scale. He literally could not stand on our scale. He had to hold the wall, and I had to hold his belt. And in 1 month, he was, when he came back for recheck, he was walking the length of a basketball court with a walker. And in 2 months, he didn't need a walker or a wheelchair anymore. And so we just filmed him just recently, because now he's ready to go back to teaching after being in a wheelchair for 15, 16 months.